if we look ahead to the rest of 2 Samuel, this seems to be the foundation point of chaos that breaks out in David's life and in his family. There's court intrigue, it's family intrigue. He's got sons who are trying to overthrow him and take the kingdom for themselves. It almost sounds like the book of Ether. And it just is just very sad. And here we have this man who had so much goodness and trust in God, the praises that we have recorded from him in Psalms, as we suppose, just so much incredible goodness. And yet he had to suffer the consequences, a number of really bad choices. So again, the scriptures are preserved for us in part that we can learn through other people's experiences to be more wise than they.
So that child of Bathsheba is born and does not survive, does not live. He passes away. And then Bathsheba bears another son named Solomon, who will be the next king. And it's promised to Solomon that he will take the throne of David, his father. Well, now you fast forward to the end of 2 Samuel, and there are a whole bunch, Taylor mentioned this, that David's family gets really messy, and there's a lot of intrigue, Amnon and Absalom, and there are all of these stories. The rest of 2 Samuel it's pretty heavy. It's pretty thick reading. Then you get into 1 Kings chapter 1, and we find David on his deathbed. And you have one of his sons named Adonijah. Now that's an interesting name, Adonijah. Adonai is the Lord, and Jah is the root for Jehovah. So that's this kid's name, and he is conspiring to take his father's throne because King David's on his deathbed. Everybody knows he's breathing his last any moment now, and they don't know when he's going to pass, but it's close. So Adonijah, this character who, with a name like that, he should have been one of the best people ever, but he's not. He's conspiring to put himself on the throne. This false king, a false Christ, so to speak, somebody who wants to appear as if he's the king, but he isn't the rightful heir to the throne according to what the promise has been given.
And a lot of people follow him. A lot of wealthy, respected, good, upstanding citizens say, hey, he seems like a good guy. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to put my lot in with him instead of paying attention to what the prophet said.
Which to me is a beautiful overlay. It's an echo of a premortal story of he to whom the throne did not rightfully belong sets himself up as that light, Lucifer, that son of the morning, and he gets a lot of very, very powerful, influential people to follow him. But in the end, chapter 1 tells us that Bathsheba gets wind of what's going on, and Nathan and Zadok, the priest, and they come to David, who he's ready to die. And they arouse him, and Bathsheba says, didn't you promise that our son Solomon would be the next king? And David arouses enough of energy that he comes awake and says, yes. And she then tells him what Adonijah is trying to do. And then David says some very, very interesting things that have beautiful connection to the New Testament. He says to Nathan and Zadok, go and take my son Solomon. Remember Jerusalem at the time of Jesus? Here's the Temple Mount. Here's the Gihon Spring in the Kidron Valley. He says, take my son Solomon to the Gihon Spring, which is in the Kidron Valley, put him on my mule, and there anoint him to be the king, and then have him basically ride into Jerusalem. It's this sign, yes, here's our new king. So fascinating. You get a mule in the Kidron Valley, coming past or starting at the Gihon Spring here. He gets anointed. He's the son of David, and he's now going to ride on that mule and come into Jerusalem as the new king. Well,
and his name means Solomon. He's the king of Peace.
The Prince of Peace. Right now, he's the son of the king, so he's the Prince of Peace. He's going to be anointed as the new king coming into the city of Jerusalem. It's this beautiful connecting story in 1 Kings chapter 1 to the event that happens on Palm Sunday when Jesus opens up the week of his atoning sacrifice. He gets on a donkey or a mule over in Bethany, rides over the Mount of Olives into the Kidron Valley, likely past the Gihon Spring, riding on a mule or a donkey. He is the anointed one, the king, and he's coming into Jerusalem. And what do the people shout on that beautiful day, waving palm branches in the air and throwing their garments down on the ground in front of him? What are they shouting? Matthew 21, verse 9. Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And the word Hosanna, Hoshana, means to say, it's a petition for salvation, right?
Yeah, save us, please.
Please save now.
In fact, the word Jesus and Shana, Hoshana, come from the same root word. So the name Jesus is embedded in the word Hoshana. It's like Jesus, please, Jesus now, which means salvation, please.
Yeah, so his name, the people would be referring to him not as Jesus in his day. It's Yeshua. And that Shua is the same root here as the Hoshana. They're pleading with him for salvation as the Son of David. They're seeing him as the repeat of what happened in 1 Kings chapter 1. So Solomon's triumphal entry into Jerusalem as their new king to take the throne of David, well, the Jewish people in the first century are seeing Jesus Christ, or Yeshua, now as the fulfillment of that Davidic promise. Here's our Messiah, our anointed one, on a mule in the Kidron Valley. He's going to save us.
And the Jewish leaders knew that they saw the symbolism, and they're like, we don't want to share power, so we're going to execute this, what they felt was an upstart. And that was one of the reasons that Jesus was crucified. They saw very clearly the symbol, and they did not want a king in Israel. They did not want Jesus as the Messiah.
A threat to their own power structure. So then Solomon takes over. David implores him to keep the commandments of the Lord in chapter 2.
When I hear that, it reminds me of Lehi's words to his children in 2 Nephi chapters 1 through 4. It's like the final parting words, and it's all focused on the covenantal connection to God. God revealed himself to you at Mount Sinai. Live those commandments. Be covenantally faithful to God. If you look carefully in the scriptures, the Bible editors identify when kings walked with God or didn't. When they walked with God, they actually lived the covenantal instructions and taught them to their people. When they didn't walk with God, they also did not model or teach people to be covenantally faithful. And that's when the Israelites are going to apostasy. So here's David, who has been seeking to be faithful, is now teaching his son yet again. Final words, be faithful to God and you will prosper. We get that throughout the Book of Mormon. If you keep the commandments, ye shall prosper in the land.